welcome back to the class, everyone. Today we are going to be finally finishing off a long ago started modding series where we were talking about what do you do when you get a specific set that rolls really high speed. We've already covered this in regards to tenacity and potency, and I guess we kind of saved the best for last, and that is going to be speed. What do you do with your speed set mods that roll really high speed secondaries? And I feel like this was the most obvious one, so we really didn't want to start with this as the series jumped off, so we covered all the other ones first. I think actually health might still be out there for probably the same obvious reason, but let's go ahead and just get into it. A lot of these characters are going to be things that people know, but some of them might be just good reminders to get things up and different mechanics that have changed as different characters or newer characters have come into play. A reminder, this is not like a 10 fastest characters thing. This is where you want your fast speed set. I want to make the distinction between the two because you're not going to see characters like Boosh on the list, who I really do like fast. I want that character to be super fast, but I also want her to have an offense set. You can get her to like 340 speed with an offense set. And I know that might sound a little bit ridiculous, but that's kind of her thing, where she doesn't have a certain threshold that she just starts to get ruined at. Whereas pretty much every character in here, not only do you want them fast, but if you could, you would want them even faster than they can be. So without further ado, let's go ahead and open up Bad Batch. Now, this is really primarily targeted at Echo, but I always end up talking about tech when we talk about Echo. Echo wants to be super freaking fast. Number one, his base speed is fast, so you want him to, and by the way, you don't have to get anyone to these numbers. Everyone should work with the mods they have to get to the goals they can. None of this is meant to be benchmarks that you either have it or you're a bad player. That's not how it works. You work with what you have. So the idea here is to put your best speed mods on these characters, and we're also not talking about Galactic Legends. So there are all my caveats, hopefully. So you want him super stinging fast so that he can go first and he can rip off all of the enemy's buffs, not just for the sake of ripping off the enemy's buffs, but when he does so, he's also going to give 5% turn meter to every single one on his team and essentially jumpstart the team. So not only is he going to go first, daze them, make sure they can't really catch up to it all, but he's going to push the rest of the team out as well. The reason why we have tech included here is because I see a lot of people get Echo to stupid, ridiculously high speeds, and they leave tech at like 250 or something like that. And the reason why this is problematic is if someone on the enemy team, like GBA or Dooku or Magna, probably not Magna, Magna's typically never fast at all, if they are able to go and cleanse the whole team, then not only are you screwed out of the daze and the healing immunity that were irresistible in the first place, but tech stun is also now not going to stun because it only stuns enemies that were dazed or target locked, which the enemies are not. So you want the gap there to be somewhat close. I believe my tech, he's not 370, he's 300 speed. I think he gets about 10 more from his unique, so he's at 317. And then I'm waiting for the buffs to be dispelled to bridge the rest of the gap. So they don't have to be right next to each other, but they need to be somewhat relatively close. You cannot have huge gaps between the two of them, because if you do, not only do the mods you put on Echo really not go to waste or not go to use, but they're also just wasted because you made it easier for the enemy teams to now cleanse it because they had such a huge area or gap really to be able to go in and get rid of all your debuffs. Next up is going to be the Emperor's Hand, also known as Mara Jade. Whether it be an Empire team or a Starkiller team, she really wants to go first. She has a ton of debuffs. Different from the previous team, you actually don't need that much of a clock turn meter train because the amount of debuffs that she puts out and they can immediately knock down really help that. She can immediately go out and apply stagger and then knock it down with her AoE that does tenacity down, which you might want to start first with that in some circumstances. But yeah, just having her as fast as possible. Even with the Starkiller unique, this is nice because when you start to look at what Starkiller can actually beat with Mara Jade, it ends up being really high competition like Galactic Legends that also have ways of giving their teams lots of speed, and you always want to be able to outrun them. I'm thinking of Rey, first off, especially with Resistance Hero Finn there, and it's going to be, he actually has a way to get above a certain amount of thresholds of speed if you let him and you don't try to counteract it with also a number of like stupid speed on Mara Jade. It is probably worth noting, in Territory Wars, I don't think I would do that. Her Omicron gives her 100% turn meter at the very beginning of the battle. It's actually one of the very few TW Omicrons I have because it is just so stinking good. She will go right at the very beginning. And then, I mean, the speed is nice on her during the battle. I definitely won't knock it, but it's also a little bit whatever. The whole team by then should really be functioning off of turn meter via the debuffs going away and whatnot. Next up is going to be Gideon. This one's a little bit more situational. While I think that, everyone out there should have a really fast Gideon, not everyone should. Most people should. I realize I just literally said the exact contradictory thing. The reason why is because, and I really need to make a video on this will probably happen sometime next week, but the amount of place that Gideon can bail you out of trouble when you don't have another solution is very high, both in 3v3 and in 5v5. And in 5s, I've loved to use them with Geos. You take out Sunfac, you put them in, and essentially it turns your 280 Geonosian Brood Alpha into like a 370 speed Geonosian Brood Alpha, because what's going to happen is he's going to go first, assuming on offense. He's going to get everyone to lose all their turn meter and then get your own team 25% turn meter to boost to be able to get them up to speed. So again, I don't actually, math probably doesn't work out exactly that way, and I don't have a calculator right now, but GBA can go way ahead. He can push back things, and then you can get the turn meter train started with your Geonosian Soldier. That's one use. There are plenty of other uses. You can use them with Padme in 3v3, where Padme doesn't lose their own turn meter, so anything that else was really fast, maybe you're trying to kill an Inquisitor team, they'll end up getting shut down. The main purpose is to be able to go before any team and immediately shut them down. And even if you can't reduce their turn meter, if they have some type of wacky mechanic where they don't let you do that, or where it's not valuable to do that, it is still really nice for Moff Gideon to go first, because he will apply Demoralize on all non-Galactic Legend our enemies, and that's negative 50% offense, critical chance, and damage. So even if you're not getting to just completely slow the enemy team down right out the gate, you're just handicapping their damage, which is really nice and beneficial for the player, regardless of the team he's going to. He can be used in an Empire team. He can be used on a Traya team. He can be used on a Padme team. He has a wide variety of uses. Next one is going to be a little bit more fun. We have Dash and Queel, and you could do both if you want to use Queel in a BAM team. I don't know if I would advise that for every player. I don't advise that for myself. BAM is typically tied to my bounty hunters to go and hunt Lord Vader if and when he can. So typically, Queel is going to end up being a free agent more often than not, and you can make either one of them super stinking fast, because if you make Queel super fast, he will go and use his I Have Spoken move right out the gate. He will give turn meter to all of his allies, including our good friend Dash here. And because they're both support characters, the leadership here is going to give 20 speed. I thought it was 20. Support and healers, there's this doubled at some point. The battle, prepared allies, doubled for light side scoundrels. I think I'm reading that right. Yeah, they get an additional bonus based on the roll, double for light side scoundrels. So either of them will come in with 20 speed. I have gone the Dash route myself, and we will pass essentially turn to Dash and the rest of the team, and then Dash can use his Seeker Missiles AoE, and this will actually also generate a lot of turn meter because of his Zeta. It gives 2% turn meter whenever there's a critical hit made by a prepared character to all prepared allies. So that was a lot of prepared. Either one of them, make them really fast, get the turn meter train going, and really stomp out your enemies before they even get a turn. The big advantage of taking Queel in that lineup is that you can actually mod Dash for damage rather than a speed set. You can get him souped up with a crit damage set or even an offense set to really get him going. But that would really require Queel to be there to get things going in the first place. So pick one. Next up is going to be Piet, the Imperial Trooper engine. The Imperial Troopers really do anything. They've been known as the glass cannons of the game. So to do anything, they have to go first. They can't really take a lot of hits. They can do a lot of really fun things, especially with a lot of the datacrons that have come out that have involved a lot of turn meter. They can go first and get a lot of things started before the enemy can. With Piet in there, he's going to be able to not only go first, but he can then apply a bunch of buffs to the team with Veer's lead. You're going to be able to gain turn meter off of that, and then everyone gets attacking and assisting. It just becomes a huge mess for the opponent. More often than not, it's an offensive team, so you're going to want to make sure that you can actually do that, not just sit on defense and then have someone's Adrad trample it or something funny like that. But he's the one who's going to get things going so they can actually beat their targets. It is also probably worth mentioning for any newer or mid-game player, the Imperial Trooper team with a fast Piet will punch up big time. Most teams that they can go before, if you have all the right Zetas in place, you will just trample them. Even if they have like an entirely relic bounty hunter team, if you can move first and start getting kills on them and start looping around turn meter, you'll just run right over them. That'll work for a lot of teams that are a lot higher gear than you. They have one of the highest values for punching up in the game. So Imperial Trooper is very good. Piet needs to go first, though, for that to be important. I guess worth mentioning, Gideon can also do that for them if he wants to. His base is higher. So next we have our Darth Revan, and this one I have come around on because I've been very back and forth with Malgus entering the game. Since Malgus has entered the game, Malgus' speed is just really stinking hard to beat. He has about 3 different modifiers that typically get him easily over 400 speed in GAC. So having Darth Revan go first hasn't been that big of a deal. I still do like a speed set and some decent speeds on him. It's probably not the only way to do it. And the reason why is, this is a really long story, but essentially because Traya is now super valuable with Talon, and you might be pulling Talon away from the Malgus team to be able to go into the Traya team because that's good. And one of the vulnerabilities that leaves open for the Malgus team is actually bounty hunters. If bounty hunters can get going right out the get-go and can come in and push or get contract on Malgus and annihilate Malgus, you now have a huge problem. By keeping Darth Revan fast, you can really hone in on health and armor or whatever defense with Malgus, and he can still be the one to go first, fear the whole enemy team, because I believe he still does get a decent amount of speed on top of what he already has here. So he's not as fast as he used to be in his meta. I think in his meta he was typically around the 350, but the reason why mine's a little bit slower is because I'm currently running a crit avoidance arrow. You don't necessarily have to do that. I like to do it. It pairs really well with Malgus in GAC, where there's already a lot of crit avoidance around there. And quite frankly, Darth Revan just doesn't need the extra damage that he's going to be missing out from not having another primary. So very good to have. Still fast. It is worth noting also, if you don't have Malgus, get him as high as possible. Him going out and fearing the enemy team is what's going to change the majority of the battles, because after that they'll get ferocity, they'll be super fast, and it'll be super hard to take them down. Next one is going to be a little bit of a combo. I've mostly gone with Zam, but the whole point of this team, similar to Imperial Troopers, is for you to go first, get contract, have Mando annihilate someone, really important, and then just take control of the battle. That being said, the reason why I want to talk about Zam is because she, through her GAC Omicron, is going to be sharing a big portion of her speed. So she gains 5% speed for each other bounty hunter ally, so 20. And then she's going to give 20% of her speed. And this may not seem like a big deal at first glance, but percent when it comes to speed is huge. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to do all the math right here. I guess maybe we can. So 20% extra speed onto her 330. So that's going to be essentially 60 speed. So she's going to be around 390. And then she's going to give 20 of it back. So that's what? Like 74? That's probably not exactly right. 78? 70 speed to the rest of her team. That's a huge boost. Like, there's no leadership that does 70 speed, but Zam will, if you have her speed high enough where she's able to give that percentage off. And then I do want to make mention that you don't want to have Grief or Bosk like super slow. I do kind of like the bang for your buck with Zam because it gets spread to everyone, and that kind of modifies the whole team, whereas having to get really fast mods on Bosk and Grief only change just Bosk and Grief. And to be able to get everything timed out right, it does become a little more difficult if you don't have a fast Zam to go with it. Next up is going to be a little bit of a newer character that is Seventh Sister. She just needs to go first in her team. She is kind of the engine. She gets the Dispel, she gets the Purge out at the very beginning of the battle, and allows for Fifth Brother and Grand Inquisitor to do some really other fun things. So you want her fast, but that's really specific to the Inquisitor team. It's not really as plug and play as some of the other characters we have. Cat here, this one is probably the most optional of them all. There are a few different builds for her. She can be really fast. That's, I think, more important if you're trying to use her as an off-meta counter with Padme. She has to be able to get out the gate and do a lot of things at the very beginning. If you're running her in JMK, specifically on defense, I don't really think this makes that big of a difference. I think you would almost really be better off wanting her to be as tanky as possible, specifically with health, to make the Jedi Master Luke counter against Jedi Master Kenobi a lot harder, because a lot of the health with Padme in there, it gets turned into bonus protection, which becomes really hard to take down when her base health is super stinking high. But it does create a lot of flexibility, again, specifically outside of the JMK comp. Cat is usable really in a ton of other places where her being faster is beneficial, because she's not able to get her ultimate instantly like she is with JMK, and she needs attacks at a turn to be able to do that, and to be able to get the buff out. To be able to do that, she needs to be able to take a turn. And last, and a little bit of least, I guess, is going to be our good friend Hoda. The reason why Hoda's here is because he needs speed to do anything. He's going to be in stealth the majority of the time, so his survivability isn't all that important, and he literally can't do damage. So you only have really one option to get him fast, and you actually can use it very well, whether it's on a Jedi Luke or Jedi Master Luke team, where you can use the lead ability, and you actually don't need to really worry about what you're going to be doing, because he can deal damage off of either one of those, calling Giant Luke to assist. Or you also, the more turns you get to take, the more Master's Training you get to pop out. I use this a little bit for 3v3 specifically with Giant Luke, so that he can get out the gate really quickly and stun the enemy team. But ultimately, this is just what's going to make either one of those teams really thrive. Probably not the utmost important thing for a Jedi Knight Revan team, but at the same time, again, the dude really can't use any other stat out there. So you might as well give him the best of what you can, as long as you're not hindering, you know, all the other team comps or things like that we've spoken about. So let me know who we missed. I know this is pretty aimed at an end game meta. I know that there are a lot of turn meter trains in the beginning of the game that do become a lot more important. And there are some other characters that aren't just going to be listed because, again, they would be better off with a different set that is also needs to be really fast. So that's going to be it for this one. Till next time, stay awesome.